From Big Ben becoming a bum out of nowhere in 2021 to him pulling out of the 2023 FIBA World Cup, here's why the NBA has forgotten about Ben Simmons. When the athlete made his way into the league, he was supposed to be the next big thing, but that never happened because he fell off and became washed. Back in 2016, Simmons was drawing all sorts of crazy comparisons, with people saying he was going to be the next LeBron. And as crazy as it sounds now, that take wasn't too ridiculous back in those days. I mean, the dude had it all. An amazing build, height, a long wingspan, and an elite skill set. So when Ben was playing college ball for LSU, he was looking like a beast on both ends of the floor, which is also how he played in his first few seasons in the NBA. After all, he won the Rookie of the Year award and had impressive seasons in 2019 as well as 2020. But then he started playing like trash out of nowhere once the 2021 playoffs began. The first-seeded Philadelphia 76ers were the favorites against the Hawks in the semis. Plus, Joel Embiid was playing some of the best basketball of his career. Yet, it was all for nothing because Big Ben choked big time. In a way, the series officially marked the athlete's fall from grace. Unlike his first few seasons in the league, he barely showed any effort and bricked shots like crazy. I mean, the dude missed almost 50 free throws against Atlanta. Though as embarrassing as this was, it was his meltdown in Game 7 that made everyone turn on him. Philly was down by 2 with 3.5 minutes to go in a series-deciding game, and the athlete had an open dunk waiting for him. But what did he do? He passed the ball, leaving everyone beyond shocked. His teammates were pissed because his insanely stupid decision allowed all the momentum to go in the Hawks' favor, resulting in the 76ers being eliminated in the second round once again. Joel Embiid was pissed as he admitted that Ben was the cause of their loss, while then 76ers coach Doc Rivers made comments which suggested he'd given up on Simmons. Since this happened, the athlete's career has only been on a downward spiral, while every fan either hates him or barely has much respect for the Aussie. You know how they say players like LeBron and Steph get too much hate? Well, let me tell you, anytime Ben comes up in the headlines, there isn't a single person who comes to his defense, unlike with King James and Chef Curry. But even though Simmons found himself at the lowest point of his life back then, that didn't mean he had to give up. After all, we've seen athletes hit rock bottom and be down in the dumps, yet they still make legendary comebacks, allowing themselves to prove everyone wrong. Unfortunately, though, the athlete didn't take that route. Instead, he chose to ruin his career even more. He could have had one of the greatest villain arcs of all time, but rather than focusing on coming back stronger, Big Ben chose to give up and requested a trade from Philadelphia in September 2021. To make things worse, the point guard even announced that he was going to skip the 76ers training camp. Things were looking bad, and they only got worse as time went on. 'Cause Simmons didn't show up for Media Day before the 2022 season was set to begin, leaving JoJo incredibly disappointed. Sadly, the 76ers couldn't find a suitable trade package for Ben, so he stayed on the team a little longer, though he acted like a diva the entire time. First, he skipped games during the preseason. Then when he finally showed up to a team practice, he looked like he couldn't care less about the team. So Rivers had to kick the dude out of practice. Then, once the regular season started, Simmons refused to play any games for Philly, and let's just say that made almost everyone forget he even exists. But soon, the 76ers got sick of the athlete, resulting in them trading him to the Nets in exchange for James Harden. Big Ben was back in the headlines for a bit, though it didn't last for long because he didn't play a game for Brooklyn that season either. That said, once the point guard finally got traded to the Nets, many thought we'd see him go back to being a beast. But as is usual with this guy, he disappointed everyone once again. Simmons finally laced him up for the Nets in the 2023 season, and his performance was nightmarish to say the least. The dude played for 23 minutes, yet he only scored 4 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 dimes. Not to mention, he fouled out. Then, in Brooklyn's first away game of the 2023 season, he scored just 7 points and fouled out once again. His stint with the Nets was off to a terrible start, though some people were still willing to give him some time to get into a rhythm. After all, he hadn't played for such a long time. But as the 2023 season went on, it was clear that Simmons was still washed. I mean, he just averaged 6.9 points, 6.1 assists, and 6.3 boards, which are career lows for him, or at least they are until he has an even worse season in 2024. And as bad as those numbers sound, let me tell you about one of the craziest stats of the 2023 season. Big Ben played in just 42 games during his 2023 campaign, but guess how many fouls he committed? 139. And that's not even the worst part, because this dude only cashed in on 133 field goals during that stretch, so he was fouling more than he was scoring. When a player's performing like that, he's asking to be forgotten about. On top of that, Simmons has one of the worst play styles ever. And now the NBA is all about shooting, yet Big Ben doesn't even know how to do that. If you want to etch your name in the record books and be remembered as one of the greatest to ever do it, you need to be able to entertain the fans. As we've seen since the 2015 season, the best way to do this is to be a lights-out shooter. But the athlete has refused to work on his broken jump shot. When he was younger, people were more forgiving as they thought he'd figure things out the older he got. And boy, were they wrong about that. Despite fans, analysts, and everyone in between begging the dude to work on his jumper, Ben's shown no signs of improving, which only pisses everyone off even more. I mean, you're a professional in a sport where shooting the ball's your main job, yet you still don't want to work on improving your shot, all while being tens of millions of dollars. It's beyond embarrassing at this point, but what makes things even worse is the fact that Big Ben thinks he can trick us, as he often posts photos of him working hard during the offseason, which he did in the 2023 offseason well. Yet each time the season begins, he plays like garbage. It's safe to say that Simmons is one of the biggest bums in the league, which has caused some analysts to say some harsh things about the athlete. In fact, Charles Barkley thinks the Aussies ruined his career. Chuck says that the point guard's got a mental block that stops him from being a confident shooter. And according to the round mound of Rebound, if Simmons doesn't shape up soon, the 2024 season might be his last year in the NBA. As for the man himself, Stephen A. Smith, he was pissed when he saw Ben troll Philly for being bounced in the 2023 Eastern Conference semis. The analyst said Ben had no right to talk about anyone because he's too scared to play basketball in the first place. Following that, he said Ben treats basketball as if someone asked him to get on the front line in Ukraine to fight Russia. But despite all of this, Simmons had a chance to redeem himself by playing for the Australian national team, though he won't be able to since he's skipping the 2023 FIBA World Cup. The Australian team has quite a few solid players, and Simmons would have played pretty well alongside them, allowing him to shut down all of his critics. Plus, imagine if he got a chance to go off against USA's team and show them who's boss. It could have been one of the most epic stories of the World Cup, while also allowing Simmons to gain back at least some of the respect he's lost since 2021. But, as usual, the Aussie made the wrong move and chose not to play for his national team, giving the NBA world another reason to forget all about him. So, from Simmons pulling out of the 2023 FIBA World Cup to him becoming a bum out of nowhere in 2021, that was why the NBA has forgotten about Ben Simmons.